of medical device development in the drug discovery process. Joining us today is Dr. Claude Bertrand, Global Vice President in charge of Discovery in Respiratory and Inflammation at Astra Zenecas. Prior to Astra Zenecas, Dr. Bertrand worked with Pfizer's Global Research and Development Company, as well as Roche. Dr. Bertrand received his master's and PhD in pharmacology from the University Louis Pasteur in Strasbourg and conducted his postdoctoral work at the University of California's School of Medicine. So, Dr. Bertrand, where do you think innovation is most relevant today? Is it in the drugs itself or in the delivery system? And why do you think one is more important or more relevant than the other?
First I will say that I don't think one is more important than the other. And you have to go back to some of the work we have done in AstraZeneca relevant to inhalation, but I would say they are probably relevant to other way of delivering drugs. And if you look at prescribers and patients, etc., they will basically tell you that about 70% of the innovation comes from the drug and 30% comes from the delivery system. So I think that you have to be or you have to bring innovation on both sides of the equation. And this means that you have to have an innovative drugs and hopefully an innovative delivery system. That's the ideal situation. Obviously, you have, different situation when you have more of a drug at the end of this of the life cycle management, where you believe that some significant improvement can be made on the delivery system, and that will bring to innovation, mostly driven by the delivery system. But I would say that in most of the cases, and if I look at our portfolio in AstraZeneca, we are looking at being innovative on the molecule as well as the delivery system.
Very good. And when we talk about the final drug delivery, it obviously involves, as you just said, both the formulation of the drug as well as a development and device. You said that 70% was focused on drug formulation and 30% on the device. What's the primary focus, and can devices improve the delivery or make a patient more compliant?
Yes, they can. But for you to understand, from an AstraZeneca perspective, we do lots of interviews across the different population. By that I mean patients, payers, and prescribers, medical doctors. We call that insight. And actually for inhalation, and then when we come to respiratory disease, for asthma, COPD, for each of those aspects, we have done an insight work. And just to give you an idea, we do for each of these insight work, for inhaler insight, for example, we have conducted about 150 face-to-face interviews with the three categories I highlighted: patients, prescribers, payers, in China, Japan, UK, Germany, US. And that gives us a sense of what are the needs. So what this type of insight tells us is that different patients have different needs, that the same patients would have different needs at different times, and that compliance with the use of inhalers is poor, and better tailoring to patient-specific needs will help. So to meet the entire range of patient needs with one inhaler, it's probably introducing too much of a compromise. So the lessons for us is that you need probably several inhalers or several delivery devices, even for the same drugs, depending on which country, which patients, and at what time of their disease you are treating the patients. So it's not one device to address one aspect. It's much more complex than that.
So does it sound like the combination is the important part, and so there's also some development in the device itself, even though the development in the drug has ceased. So is there a path? Are they developed together in conjunction, or is the drug developed first and then the device?
They are absolutely developed in parallel. That's, I think, an absolute key to success. So you have to concentrate on the disease, the biological activity you're trying to get through the mechanism of action you're targeting, and that's really focusing on the drug. But then the device will be developed in parallel. If your mechanism of action is, for COPD, it's going to be a different device than it's for asthma, or if it's for CF, because the morphology, the anatomy of the lungs looks very different. The mechanism of action you want to tackle could be in a different place. And then the patient you're targeting could be very, very different. So if I just take an example, in asthma, if you deal with kids, you'll have to have a very different device than if you deal with elderly who have, trouble just to go through some of the technical aspects of the device. And if you go for COPD, you probably have to go for deeper lungs than if you go for asthma, which is mostly large airways. So it's just to give you using the lung as an example, which I again believe will transfer to other delivery system in other parts of the body, but it's much more complex than people think originally.
I see.
And then if I can this idea of developing the device in parallel to the molecule is that, some molecule will be more amenable because of the physicochemical properties to a PMDI type of device, while some other will be more amenable to a dry powder inhalation. Some other, because of the dose and the length of treatment, will be more amenable to general inhalers.
And you mentioned a couple factors, so I wanted to see if there are other factors. One was indications was a factor in developing the device, as well as the age group. Are there other factors that you take into consideration in developing the delivery device itself?
Yeah, there's. I guess the disease and the age group are two important factors. But I think what you have to do, you could spend, probably an hour defining different needs for different patients. I mean, the idea and our vision in Astra Zenecas is to make sure that we have, first, in relation to your first question, an integrated approach to the drug and the inhaler development, and that both elements we're working on together in synergy. A very important element is to be patient-centric. So even in one disease, and if you look at COPD, it's a very complex disease. You have different segments of the disease depending if you're looking at getting bronchodilation versus an anti-inflammatory aspects, or inhibiting mucus hypersecretion. The needs will be different. The place again will be different.
And in your opinion, with the development of a drug delivery solution, is that a strategic need?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. You need to think about it from day one. And I don't think that you'll be very successful if you start to think, at a later stage when you already have a drug or when you already know where you want to go and you say, oh, God, now I need a device. That's probably too late. It's a very long, the development of a device and trying to improve the device over what's already available outside, in the outside world, takes probably as long as developing the drug.
Are there regulatory requirements?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Again, when we do this, what we call insight approach in AstraZeneca, which I think, personally, having been through other companies, is quite unique, is looking at patient needs, medical doctors' needs, and the payers. And that goes with regulatory agencies. So, we have very I would say, painful example in Astra Zenecas where, we were trying to go with turbohaler, which is a DPI, dry powder inhaler, across the world. And, we had a tremendous problem to get that accepted by the FDA. Well, actually, in Europe, it was fairly well accepted because they believed that the viability we had on the dose and the range of the dose was still too big. So, of course, regulatory agencies are absolutely essential to keep in mind and to have a dialogue with when you start to think about developing a device. You have to make sure that they will meet the market requirements and the regulatory agencies' requirements.
Okay. And what about the strategies for development? Can you say that when you initiate research, is it possible to say we've discovered a great delivery solution and want to see which molecule we can apply to it?
No, I think it's an integrated solution. First of all, if you look at device, you have to think about what, as a drug developer, you would always start from the simpler. So first of all, you always think, why am I not going oral? And if I'm not going oral, these are for very good, hopefully good reasons. So one could be just technical, is that this, if you think about silent therapeutics, siRNA for the moment, it's a major issue to get them orally bioavailable. So you have more chance of getting activity if you go locally. So one could be just purely technical, but most of the time, it's also getting safer because delivered to the right place. Generally you increase your therapeutic index. It's also because some mechanism would not work unless they are delivered locally. Good example is bronchodilation in respiratory diseases. You have to relax the muscle where it is and not across the body. I think that's the example that comes on the top of my mind, but I'm sure there are others.
And generally speaking, would you rather develop your own device, or can development of a drug device be outsourced to a partner?
It depends. If I look historically, I would say it was mostly done internally. So if I look at GSK and the Discus, this has been done internally. If I look at Astra Zenecas and the turbohaler, this has been done internally. Over the last few years, it's clearly changed, like for everything else, actually, even for developing our drugs now, we collaborate and we form strategic alliances on a more regular basis. For devices, exactly the same. It's a race, and we want to try to get the best, and we'll go wherever is needed to get the best device we need. So we do we do both. We do as much internally than we do externally.
And would you say, look, kind of your view on the industry, is that the same view? Is outsourcing looked at, and as well as insourcing?
Yes. I know, again, it's sorry to be so narrow in a way, looking at respiratory disease, but that's probably the area I know the best. I know that our major competitors, BI, GSK, Pfizer, are all doing things internally as well as externally. Pfizer, for example, had started externally with Meredica a couple of years back, and then eventually acquired the old company and people with it. And I think we all do the same. It's that we just, it's as I said, it's a race. It's a very, very complex area, and we need to use all the brains available.
And you mentioned that it's a race. It's a very competitive environment, and even among the branded. But if we add generics into it, now generics come into the market. It's also very competitive. Could a new delivery system that only worked with your drug, could that be a barrier to entry, or can that protect some lost market share?
Yes. We strongly believe so. I don't think that we have, again, in the for sure in respiratory and in inhalation, we have enough example yet of generics, but we know they are coming. But we believe that there are several areas where we can still improve our delivery systems, and we know how complex it is. And therefore, I absolutely believe that we can help protecting our market share for at least a longer period of time, even with generics.
And what specific steps do you think you'll be taking in the future as generics gain more strength in the marketplace?
I mean, for me, although people will have trouble probably to believe us, but it's not about marketing. It's about what patients, again, payers and medics want. So if you manage to get something that really fulfill unmet medical needs, you will win. And obviously, not at any price. But I really believe that what we're concentrating on in AstraZeneca is to improve efficacy, and that comes from what you put in your device as much as the device itself. And I think that's what we have to concentrate on. It's going to be driven by data. Because when you look at data and clinical readout, it's a mix of the efficacy of the drug, on how efficient your device delivers the drug, and how patients are or not compliant using that device. I mean that drug in that device. So it's a composite of all of that will tell you that eventually your product is more efficacious than a competitor product, and that's true for generics as well as new branded product.
And so will new combinations of drug and delivery devices, will that help get maybe new indications or new patients?
Yes. I mean, we see that with, we see that for AstraZeneca and GSK with, so in U.S. is Advair and Symbicort. We just introduced Symbicort in the U.S. Advair has been there for a couple of years. I mean, of course, Advair is called Seretide in Europe. Now, if you look at these two products, they are a combination of, very old mechanism of action. I'm not saying very old molecules, but very old mechanism of action. But they clearly had an incredible penetration on the marketplace. I mean, Advair is the biggest product for GSK now, and it's a couple of billions. And the mechanism of action in there, it's a beta-2 agonist for bronchodilation and a steroid for the inflammation part. Now, there's nothing really that innovative in the mechanism there, but the innovation is being able to combine two of those molecules in one device. Now, that sounds simple on paper, but only two companies in the world have done that so far, and that's AstraZeneca and GSK. And it's definitely a very successful product. Now, it's not because of marketing. This is a successful product because it does something to patient that actually those two molecules in two separate devices have not been able to achieve. And we have now, plenty of phase 3 clinical trials to show that actually having two in the same device is more efficacious than having two in separate devices. And obviously, I mean, this is a good example where for an elderly patient, they're not going to carry 2, 3, 4 inhalers in their pockets. So if you can start to combine things that we know works, but work better when they are associated, and then increase the patient compliance, the overall efficacy in a phase 3 trial is absolutely outstanding. And we just have now more studies coming out when we combine those two plus the third one, which is muscarinic antagonist. And there have just been, very recent study data released, and again, you get a major step change. So the next challenge is, would we be able to put those three mechanisms in one device and have a triple combination?
So it sounds like obviously AstraZeneca follows a strategy of product renewal through improved delivery systems, and I think that was a great example. Is there another example where where you've been able to renew a product, or after it's gotten maybe towards the end of its product lifeline as a singular product, but with the combination again renewed great interest in the product?
No, these are the example. These are the example I know, but I'm sure there are other. I don't know. For Astra Zenecas, I think that's the best example. But I mean, what I would not like to see is at the end of this interview thinking that actually this is our main goal. Our main goal is to come up with new products and have the right device for those new products. And when when you start to combine rather all the molecules in one new device, you got a new product. It's not the same anymore. And as I said, for me, the drivers is clinical efficacy, and that's the only way you can get them registered as a branded product. But let's be clear. Anyway, Astra Zenecas is not in the generic business. It's one of the few big pharma who is absolutely not in generic business.
Great. So the focus is on coming up with new devices, with new drugs.
Yeah.
For better indications and better efficacy in multiple patient groups.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Dr. Bertrand, thank you very, very much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.